When God moves you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. When I initially moved, I was not aware that God was moving a lot of His daughters for purpose, for ministry, and for marriage. I'm so glad I didn't know any of that. It would have brought some level of confusion, you know, because I'm sure many can relate that when they moved, it's like they're moving. Some were not necessarily moving to where the kingdom spouse is, but they were just literally moving away. They could have been even like opposite directions, and someone might ask, like, what is this? Because God is orderly, He's a God of order. So, how then can God be sending you elsewhere? So, So God moves us for those different purposes, and perhaps we should not really put them together. God can move you for purpose, and He can also move you for ministry, and He can also move you for marriage, meaning it increases your chances of moving around. So, all I'm trying to say is to the women who've already moved, have that open heart to move again. Okay? This word applies to those whom it applies to. And it might not resonate with you right now because of what is at hand, and might resonate with you in future, or you might just understand, right away. And this word might just be for you. Now, initially, when I left Gauteng, I left feeling very glad in my heart to move. And just a few days before leaving, God gave me dreams, but the dreams God gave me were about territory, and it was about land. So that's what God showed me. Like, I didn't know at that time about kingdom marriage and all of that. I didn't even know that God was moving His daughters. I was not even aware that God was busy reshuffling people. And I was not even aware at that time that many marriages were being shaken, you know. So I just left to come and start my life here. And God being good, you see, when God is in something, there is an ease to it. It doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It doesn't mean you won't feel some discomfort at time. You will go through that, but there will be an ease. There will be a level of ease and a level of peace to it. Okay. The only thing I could say I perhaps struggled with in the beginning was faith. I felt like my faith was being stretched way too much. I felt like it's okay to believe, but we can always move from like we can take one step at a time. I felt like I had to make a giant leap, like a great leap of faith, and I felt it was too much. It was just too much than I could bear. But I don't know how God did it. I don't know how God managed to. I don't know how God did it, but I was able to just, let's just say His grace is sufficient for us, and I was able to believe. So during that time, God made no mention of no husband. God made no mention of no ministry. Although I was called in my 20s, in my mid 20s, okay, I am aware of that calling, but I spent so many years looking for an opportunity for me to go into ministry. Okay, and yeah, I just didn't see any way. I just didn't see any way how that could come to pass. And there are marriages that inhibit a person, and a marriage that inhibits you from fulfilling God's purpose. It's a marriage worth praying about and asking and seeking the Lord concerning it. What matters, what is more important, is our destiny. When I leave this earth, that has always been my prayer, that when I leave this earth and I stand before the Father in heaven, I don't want to be ashamed. I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to be able to say that, yes, I did all that I was called to do. You know, that was my prayer. And I spent so many years with my neck stretched out looking for opportunities. And I got very little, like very little opportunities. I really did. Okay. And I'm happy that there are instances where I was literally just thrown in the pool, for me to just, it was like I was just thrown in the deep end rather. It was a matter of sink or swim. And it was during those times that I got good practice. So I didn't get the practice I had desired or wanted, but God did put in some practice for me, which is not what I would have chosen for myself. But I learned either way, and I learned quicker God's way. Okay. So, yes, God showed me. For me, it was about territories, about land. And that's what I saw. And I just, like, I just noted it down and I just went on with my life. So as I began to be listening to other YouTubers as they preaching and that teaching, I understood that there was more to my move than I had thought. And they started speaking about marriage, and I realized that although when I was able to know who my kingdom spouse was, I understood that although we were in the same province, we were literally hours away from each other, you know and I wasn't really concerned about that. I just thought to myself, I guess I was aware that there was still, like, between where I was and the coming marriage and the promised marriage of God, there was a lot of work to be done. And that's where my eyes were. That's where my focus was. Okay. I was aware of the gap. Okay. So it just meant work, and it meant time, and it was not something that was going to happen soon. That is what I understood. Okay. So for someone else, who might be wondering, well, I moved, but God didn't show me territory. God showed me marriage. So you're moving for marriage. Or God showed me a job, then you're moving for a job. Like, God does let us know. It's like when you're fasting, when you fast, do take note of the dreams you have on the very first night or the very first day of your fasting. It very much reveals what your fasting will be dealing with, what mainly is the main thing you'll be praying for. you know you go on a fast, and then the Lord reveals to you, okay, this is what is at hand. Okay. So yeah, so with me, I didn't see no marriage. Okay, so on coming here, I know someone else might be like, well, they also would love a territory. They've got big dreams for God and things they would like to do for God. God places these desires in our hearts. They're really the desires from God to do good, to do like charitable work for the community, all those things, serving the people. That's just God's desire put in your heart. So why is it that other people have gotten land and territories and others didn't? I don't know. I believe that it's still coming though. What I can tell you is, when I was 10, I still remember very well. I was with my friend, and it's funny, her name actually means a woman of prayer. I actually took a picture of her. Growing up, we didn't take a lot of pictures, but I actually went with her to this Photoshop, and we actually took a picture together. And I'm happy that I actually took a picture with her, because I even remember the street where we were walking. It was just not far from my church, my childhood church. And as we were walking past it, I remember we started talking about children and when we were grown up. And I told her that I would love 4 children. That was because my own mother had 4 children. My parents had 4 children, okay, together. So I wanted also to have a boy and a girl, and I wanted to adopt another boy and a girl. And she also felt the same way. So we were just talking and fantasizing about how beautiful it would be when we married and we've got our own children, and we go and adopt more children, and we'll live happily ever after. You know, when I told my daughter this desire of mine, she's like, "You people were weird." She said to me, "No 10-year-old will be dreaming about adopting." I'm like, I think it just depends, because when my 6-year-old has actually told me of adopting, she actually told me that she actually would love to adopt a girl when she's grown, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, we are all called to what we're called to. So, when I got married and I had a son and I had a daughter, I'm like, everything is just playing into place. So, I started to speak to my ex husband, my husband then at the time, that my desire was always to adopt. and he had all these reasons, and mostly cultural and traditional reasons why he wasn't happy with adopting and he couldn't do it, and I felt crushed, like I felt like it will never happen. But God, in His faithfulness, I think it was a few months later that I had a dream, if not a few weeks later. Okay, it was so long ago. I had a dream, and in this dream, it was a dream, and within the dream was a vision. Those kind of dreams, and I saw myself in an orphanage. But at first, I was not aware it was an orphanage. And then it was that dream that I already shared, where I said we walked into this big white building. We went up the stairs, and then there was this huge double door. We walked in, and we went into the kitchen, and we saw my father. My father was a carpenter. He's late. He's late now. My father was a carpenter, so he had done the most beautiful kitchen unit I've ever seen. It went all the way to the ceiling. It was just beautiful and proper, but the material was very luxurious. And I kept thinking, like, whose house is this? Like, whose house is this? Like, this is just a beautiful house. And when I realized that it was an orphanage, then I was like, wow. I started giving tips on what needed to be done, and I had authority over that place, and I could be able to rectify. There were things that had to be rectified. Okay, so when I woke up in the morning, I was like, yeah, like, that's beautiful. It's like God is saying you wanted a son and a daughter to adopt, and you can't have them. I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to give you lots and lots of children to hug, lots and lots of children to kiss, lots and lots of children to cuddle, to play with. You'll get to mother all of them. I'm going to give you so many. You won't be able to hug all of them at once. I'm going to more than satisfy that desire, that feeling of mourning, that you are mourning those kids that you can never have. I'm multiplying them. I was happy about that, but I had concerns. My concern was, well, to take care of children is expensive. Like, if I had an orphanage, like, you see, I was making changes. Like, the changes I was making was upgrading. Like, my concern, of the concerns I had, was that they had made the bedrooms into more like a dorm, like a dormitory, and I felt there was no privacy. That they should rather be bedrooms where it's like two people sharing a room. Yeah, two beds in a room. That was my suggestion. That's what I was asking for. So in that's the upgrade that I needed in the children's bedrooms, in this hallway that they turn into dormitories. But now I saw the kitchen, and I'm like, that kitchen was too luxurious. I would have rather spent a lot of that money for stationery, for books, so that the kids have got books to read, and there's always some stationery back at home, So I had that, and my spirit was ruffled concerning that, until the Lord just waited for me to calm down. And I remember the Lord. I like the Lord's English. I can tell easily when the Lord communicates. Well, He does speak in simple English and normal common English, even my own vocabulary. But it's His vocabulary that really gets me. Sometimes I laugh about it, like the way He talks. But I think He does it on purpose for me to know clearly that it's Him. So for the Lord was like, and I'm like, that is like all this luxury, all this waste. And God is like, it's not luxury, it's royalty. I once even made a video where I use that term, that it's not luxury, it's royalty. And God was like, you have children, don't you want the best for your children? So even these kids, I'm the father to the fatherless. Of course, I want the best for these children. And I am the Elohim, the I am that I am. So of course I want the best for these children. Silver and gold is mine. I want the best for them. Then I understood that God just wanted the best for the kids. And what someone might have deemed as wasteful, like, it mattered to God that when these kids walked into the kitchen, they don't feel like they're in an orphanage, but they feel like they're in a home. And they are blessed to be in that home. Like, that was the atmosphere. And I'm like, oh, wow. Oh wow, you know, this kind of dream was one of those dreams that made me realize that when God releases the finances to the church, a lot of religious people are going to trip. A lot of religious people are going to trip. Sorry, you guys. So then I thought to myself, so if God wants such beautiful and glamorous things for the orphans, some people might just be offended, like this woman is wasting money. Rather, this money should have gone to this or should have gone to that. But that's just how God wants it. Even I was tripping. Even I was tripping about it. But God wanted me to know, like, He wanted the best for those children. So God had painted an image for the orphanage that I never thought. You know, God took me on this journey where He, I don't even want to get into it, where He allowed me to see how big, how broad, how vast I could go with this. And I was surprised. I was God broke the walls around my mind concerning orphanages. So I was surprised. So, yes, with the coming wealth transfer, you guys, the ideas that God has for the church is not what we are used to. The ideas that God has for the orphanages is not what we're used to. And it's amazing. Like it's amazing. You know, all in all, like we'll just be blessed to see it and to experience it. You know, for someone else who might not understand, like, why is it that some people are getting things, understand that it has to do with their calling, it has to do with the desires of their heart. And there are some long-standing desires, long-standing dreams, long-standing hopes, and we're just waiting for God to open the doors. Okay. And another thing that I've already shared, that I've shared that I remember my home was just full of people. And you know, for those of you who've been following me long enough, you know, I love space. I love my space. And I need a home that's just open. You know, I love a home that is big. You know, and for someone else who might say, like, here is a God is gonna, imagine if God is gonna bless someone as wasteful as Maria, like all God's resources are gonna go to nowhere, but I need my home bigger. It was big enough to accommodate the strangers. Yeah, those people are strangers. I couldn't even say, okay, this is an usher, okay, this is a bishop, okay, this, nah, I didn't know who those people were. And they were not active in the church. So these are the people who had come into the church, had come into the sanctuary, and they refused to go home. They were fed the word, and they got tired, and they just walked around. And when they got tired, they just went into the house and made themselves comfortable. And I remember I even shared this dream where I said I went into the house, I was exhausted, and I thought, let me go cook something quickly. And when I got there, I saw all those people. I realized I can't even cook in a small pot. It's gonna take a long time for this food to be cooked. But God was able to touch someone to quickly prepare a meal, and I was able to have that load off of my shoulders, and I was able to eat, and there was even more than enough food. God literally increased the food. And I even spoke about the fish. We were supposed to eat fish for that night, but on that evening the sizes of the fish were wrong. God did not only increase the quantity of the fish, but the size of the fishes were wrong. That was not the size I bought. That's not the size of the fish I usually buy. Okay. So God understands our calling. So God understands our calling. So I think it would help us also to patiently wait on God to open doors, as we understand that the blessings that are being released are in accordance to what God has put in people's hearts. And some people are called to business, and those things are released to them so they can begin business, because there's a shift in the way ministry is going to work. So the Lord wants to get his people financially okay, so they do not have to depend on ministry to be okay. All right, to be all right financially. So yeah, I just wanted to encourage someone, like, God could have called you to move. It's not just about marriage. Like, it's not all about marriage. It's not all about ministry. It could be business. It could be anything. And A lot of you are called to many things. A lot of you are called to wear different hats. You may be called to be in that place to learn something, and then you'll get to move again. All I'm trying to say is, do not come to a point where you just relax and you sit and you think that is your forever home. But I really think that the people whom their home is their forever home until they get married will actually know. I don't even think it's something I have to say. But I'm just trying to clear the confusion of why do I feel led to go to the east when I know very well my person is in the west. So I just want you to know, like, learn what God wants you to learn, like, achieve what God wants you to achieve, attain what God wants you to attain. You are doing this for the kingdom. You are doing this for the kingdom. You will be challenged. Your faith will be forced to grow. You will be forced to believe. Okay, there are circumstances that will force you to think outside of your box. You'll be forced to come out of your shell. And for people like us who are introverts, it's been a fight, but we learn to get things done, and it is for the kingdom. It is for the kingdom. And remember, God's grace is sufficient for you. Yes, God's grace is sufficient for you. That's what I wanted to share. So thank you guys. God bless.